The opening game of the Western Conference Finals last night on a Wednesday evening in Minneapolis that we recap and break down for you here on this Thursday morning on the early line on SportsGrid. He is Donnie, I am Ben. And Donnie Rightside was all over it yesterday, hinting that the Mavericks had a good opportunity to go on the road and steal game number one in Minnesota. That's exactly what happened. Dallas wins outright as a 4.5-point underdog, 108-105 over the Timberwolves to take a 1-0 series advantage in the Western Conference Finals. A combined 63 points from Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Kyrie pours in 30, the most he has scored so far for Dallas in this postseason, and Luka Doncic scores 33 as well. The dynamic duo for Dallas leads the Mavericks to a Game 1 victory in the WCS. Dallas wins outright once again as a 4.5-point road underdog.
Yeah, and also taking a look at some of the things that went right and some of the things that might have went wrong for us. We were thinking if the Dallas Mavericks were going to win this basketball game, Ben, who would it be, better for if the game goes over? Well, it would be the Dallas Mavericks. This game does go over. Yeah. Also told you the 4.5 points made a lot of sense because of how much Minnesota used in game number 7 of the gas tank just to get by that series to get home. We weren't calling for Minnesota just to not show up, and they played quite well throughout the entire evening until that final quarter where they just kept turning the basketball over. But also from the poll we talked about yesterday, which is a superstar tandem that you trust more? And it was no disrespect to Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, who are tremendous players in the NBA, but I just looked and said, man, Luka can take it up a notch, and we've seen Kyrie in the biggest moments hit monster shots to win an NBA championship. And it didn't surprise me that they combined for 63 points last night. And also, sometimes you need one of your superstars right away in the basketball game to take control. And you saw Kyrie Irving do that yesterday. Now, you are on a learning curve still if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves in some areas that you haven't played before, like the Western Conference Finals. Big stretches of that game opening up, Karl-Anthony Towns was nowhere to be found. Terrible efficiency. And then we saw parts of that second half where Anthony Edwards just disappeared, and we had no idea. Well, come on, man, you're a scorer. You scored 40 points multiple times in these NBA playoffs already, and we just didn't get that effort. But as I say this, it's a great performance by the Mavs. I expected it. Don't count the Timberwolves out. This is going 7, and this will be an awesome series to watch. But Dallas was just a better basketball team last night when it counted.
The Timberwolves have been booked as a favorite in all of their home games throughout this postseason. But that's the only time Minnesota has been a favorite throughout the playoffs. And now at home, after last night, 6 games, 3-3 straight up and against the spread. The 4.5-point number in favor of the T-Wolves last night was actually the largest spread in Minnesota's favor at home throughout this playoff run. Meanwhile, the Mavericks an underdog in 5 playoff games so far this year. Now 4-1 straight up, and of course then against the spread. Dallas went under in 4 of 6 games against OKC. Minnesota under in 4 of 7 against Denver. All 4 unders for the Timberwolves against the reigning champs came with a T-Wolves victory. That is why we looked at the total yesterday and said if Dallas pulls off the outright upset, it probably favors pushing to the over, and that's what we got for the pregame over-under of 206 and a hook. Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving were sensational, and Kyrie scored 30 without hitting a single 3, 0 of 3 from deep. Luka Doncic had the volume once again. He was 3 of 10 from beyond the arc. And it really was a great game, Donnie. And it's maybe a game that will be indicative of what we are going to see throughout the Western Conference Finals. No lead in the second half, greater than 8 points. We never got to double digits in the final 2 quarters. The Mavs actually had that 8-point lead early on in the fourth and final stanza. The Timberwolves had a 1-point lead with under 5 minutes remaining. So back and forth we went in that fourth quarter. And I will just say this, Jaden McDaniels has been great for the Timberwolves throughout this postseason run. Leading scorer for Minnesota last night with 24. He made 6 triples. But if Jaden McDaniels in the Western Conference Finals, when you have Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards on your starting 5 is going to be your leading scorer, it's probably not going to result in many victories for the Timberwolves in the WCF.
No, it's not. And also, how many times have we watched the highlights for the Minnesota Timberwolves? And you watch Anthony Edwards. It's slashing to the bucket. Amazing dunks. Finishing at the rim. Getting to the free throw line. He turned into a de facto 3-point shooter last night, Ben. 6 of 16 from the floor, but That included 5 of 12 from three-point range. You love the 5 of 12 from three-point range, but where were the times where you're just going to say, I'm more talented than you on defense, I'm going to be able to get my buckets at the rim? Look, great, you can't compare him to like a LeBron James, but there were times back in LeBron James' career where the game was on the line and he just took the basketball at the three-point line and says, nobody can stop me getting to the rim. Watch me get to the rim. I'm either going to dunk it or get fouled, and away we go. I need more of that from Anthony Edwards, but he'll learn and he'll turn up the gas pedal because, as I said, there's been multiple games where he's completely taken it over in the playoffs. Last night was one of those where you were waiting for him to take that mantle in the second half, and he wasn't able to do so. But now you decompress. You have that game 1 loss, still game number 2 on your home court. All is not lost here. I expect a much better performance out of the Minnesota Timberwolves. But again, we're not taking any credit away for the Dallas Mavericks. It's hard to win on the road in the NBA. It's really hard to win on the road in the Western Conference Finals. And they did the ultimate thing that you need if you feel that you're the underdog in the series. Win game number 1 and set the tone for that series. The Mavericks did that.
The Mavericks absolutely did that. The duo for Minnesota did not. 12 of 32 from the floor last night combined between Cat and Ant. And Anthony Edwards was critical of his own singular performance in game number 7 in the Mile High City against the Nuggets. 6 of 24, 2 of 10 from deep. He was 5 of 12 from 3 yesterday, but 12 of his 16 field goal attempts coming from 3. 5 of his made 6 field goals also coming from deep. Not necessarily the recipe for success for Anthony Edwards. So Dallas entered this series as the series underdog. The Mavericks, after taking that 1-0 series lead, now the series favorite on that outright price to win the Western Conference crown at minus 164. Donnie, you said do not count out the Minnesota Timberwolves. How come?
Because it's just the pedigree of this team to be able to lock in load. And also, you saw the final score, 108-105. You take a look at the superstars for the Mavericks. They've really performed well. The superstars didn't perform well for the Timberwolves. Once that pendulum swings, we'll get back in even here. This is going to be 1-1 going back to Dallas. I'm going to tell you that right now. So whatever the best bets on the next game are, you know where I'm going, T-Wolves.
We got some best bets for the series prices as well up next. The Dallas Mavericks have taken a 1-0 series advantage in the Western Conference Finals over the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Mavs winning game number 1, 108-105 outright as a 4.5-point underdog, total of 206 and a hook. Pre-game does go over. The Mavericks entered the opening game of the WCF as a series underdog. It was Minnesota, the series outright favorite on that series outright price, minus 178. Now it's Dallas that has the minus money number next to its name. Minus 164 for the Mavericks, now as your series outright favorite. Anytime you take a game 1 on the road to start a series, more than likely you are going to flip to that series favorite. But Donnie, we've talked about this series both before game number 1 last night, and here we are following game number 1 on this Thursday morning. We expect it to be competitive. We expect it to probably go at least 6, maybe even the entire duration of 7 games. How does Dallas winning game number 1 change your outlook, if at all?
I don't know if it changes it all that much, but then it sort of puts that emphasis here. If you do think Dallas is going to win the series, how did they win their previous series? Game 6 at home. If you're winning games on the road, that means there's a chance for a game 6 in your own building. You can actually close out the team that you're playing. Now, also, having said that, how is this going to play out? We talked about this before the series. You look at the Dallas Mavericks right now, minus 164 price. And I said if they went 1-1 split, regardless if they won game 1 or game number 2, the Dallas Mavericks, they still would be a slight favorite returning back to their home court for the series. Just trying to play it out, because if it's 1-1 going back, Dallas is going to be favored in game number 3 and also game number 4, barring any disastrous injuries on both sides here, just contemplating it here. So I'm not surprised that game number 1 and or game number 2 went to the Mavericks. I do think the Timberwolves do win game number 2, but having said that, again, for the original point, it sort of opens up. I still think this is going 7, I do. But now if you're looking from a Dallas Mavericks perspective, for them to win in 7, that's not what Dallas wants, because that probably means they had a chance to close it out in game number 6 and didn't take advantage of that. So game number 6 at that plus 170 price that you're seeing now, that's a direct shot from last night with the Dallas Mavericks winning game 1 on the road, which means they have home court advantage, which means they might be able to close out in game 6. So I understand where the price points are coming from here at FanDuel.
So as we entered the Western Conference Finals, games 5 and 7, plus 220, game number 6 for this series to end in 6 games, regardless of which team was victorious, advancing to the NBA Finals was the shortest price at 2-1. But Minnesota to win this series in 5 was the shortest from the correct score market. That's the team that wins and in how many games at plus 360. Now Dallas to win in 6 is that shortest number at plus 330, 50 cents in front of Minnesota in 7 at plus 380. Pretty much all to say the markets now favor the Mavericks. But I think my best bet here, DRS, I bet yesterday over in the over-under total games component for the Western Conference Finals, over 5.5. The juice was heavy at minus 175. I still think we see 6. And I still think Minnesota can win this series. So I like the Timberwolves plus a game and a half on the series spread. That gives you a couple of outcomes as you see that minus 114 number. The Timberwolves can win the series outright, or the Timberwolves can lose this series in 7 games, and Minnesota covers that series spread, now updated as the underdog.
Yeah, I'm going to thread that needle here because, again, I did think that the Minnesota Timberwolves would lose game number 1, but I still do think they're going to win this series, which is kind of odd because, like, oh, no. You want 2-0 series on your home court, and then you'll deal with getting maybe a split in Dallas, and you'll wind up winning it here. I'm not giving up on the Timberwolves. They're too good here. Their young superstar hasn't performed in the past 2 games, but it showed me a lot. When you go to Denver and your best player doesn't perform up to his capabilities and you still win, and you saw last night, a couple of your best players didn't perform up to capabilities. You still had a legitimate chance to win that game. Just wait until those superstars do play to their capabilities, and they'll be just fine. There's no panic here, and as you said, if now you're looking, you should be happy that Minnesota lost game number 1 if you always like them to win the series, because those price points, Ben, so much better this morning than they were yesterday before the game tipped off.
And even before the series, we correlated the individual stars on either side of the series outright price. That remains the same for the WCF MVP. And I would say, if you think Dallas wins this series outright, Luka Doncic is winning the MVP award. Kyrie Irving was sensational. His best game of the postseason last night, scored 30. Luka still ended up with 33. If the Dallas Mavericks win the Western Conference title, Luka Doncic is going to win the Western Conference MVP. You have my word. If not, we can come up with some bet and something I have to do here on the show. If Dallas wins the Western Conference and Luka does not win the Western Conference Finals MVP award.